This is where we left off. We talked about temperament. We talked about babies, basically. And then I asked you what temperament you were. Didn't I ask you some of that? I didn't do that yet? Okay, I'll do that. Let's do temperament. I did the energy levels, the moods, the difficult babies, slow to warm up babies, shy babies, and easy babies, right? I did all that. Let's talk about reaction range. All right? That's another concept that we have in nature versus nurture. And really what reaction range is, it's the limits the environment places on the effects of hereditary. So this is really about nature and nurture. And the best example I can give you would be nature, what have you inherited? All right, so in terms of nature, have you taken IQ tests before? Okay, actually most of you have, and you probably don't remember it. Back in around 2nd or 3rd grade, they had a standardized test called the Stanford-Binet, and I'd say if you were in Texas, you probably took that. Some of you are probably not old enough for this, but back in the 1990s, they used to use an intelligence test to determine whether or not you got into the talented and gifted programs. Anybody remember those? And the only way you got into them in the 1990s is if you scored high on the intelligence test. You could have gotten D's and F's in your report card, but still got into that program if your IQ score was high enough. And some of you who your IQ score wasn't that high, but you're A students, you didn't get into the programs. And your parents were upset about that, because that was ridiculous, really, to do that. So as we got into the 2001 and 2004 and 5, they started changing some of those programs and didn't always count on intelligence tests. But when we talk about an IQ score, usually we might have an IQ of, let's say, 107, okay? Well, in terms of nature, the real IQ score for you might be an average of 107, but okay, there may be what's called limits to that. Okay, your score may wind up being maybe a 98 or maybe you're 112 because there's a range that's there. Well, why is it that you get 112 or a lower score on the IQ? Well, now that's all about nurture. Okay, how enriching your environment was when you were growing up. An enriching environment where someone gave you a lot of sensory stimulation and talked with you and you read a lot and you had some pretty good early teaching and education experiences, you might move towards the 112, okay? But if you didn't get that and your environment was more of a deprived environment, you might have been down lower in the mid-90s on that one instead. Okay, so that's an example of reaction range that's there. Same thing with your height, by the way. You have a genetic limitations that you're going to be so tall. Maybe you'll be 6'2", or you might wind up 5'11". Well, it depends upon the nurture in terms of the food you ate when you were growing up, whether or not you reached that highest level that's there. So when we look at nature and nurture, we see you got to be who you are with a combination of nature, genetic predispositions, brain development, and then nurture in regards to what went on in your environment. It's a long explanation, right? So let's go back to the question we had the other day. As a child, which type of temperament were you? Now, those of you who weren't here the other day probably don't know what I'm talking about. But I basically said all infants are born either difficult, slow to warm up, easy, or a combination of some of those. Which ones were you? See if you remember. If you don't remember, don't even answer this, right? Just, what do you remember? You probably go home and ask your parents this. See what they say. All right? So what do we have in this class? A lot of, boy, you're my easy class, huh? Easy. 53% of you are easy. Quite a few combinations of it. Very few are kind of shy. But some of you are difficult. We're difficult babies. Well, the next question is, what type of temperament are you now? Did you change or didn't you change? Now, again, this is going to be an example of nature and nurture working together, okay? You might have been born a certain way, but then your environment, okay, either may have made you shyer or less shy. Remember I gave you that example the other day, didn't I? Okay, about the mother, did I give you that example? I did. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm looking around and some of you, you give me that dazed look, all right? So it depends upon the environment. Now, this research also says, though, if you're born shy, you may always have a tendency to be shy in your life. Okay? You might be slightly shy, okay? But you may always have a little tendency for that. I know I'm up in front of this class, but I was a slow to warm up baby. I'm a little shy. But somewhere back in my early years, I said, basically, this is not getting me anywhere. Okay, I need to be able to be a little more assertive in my life. And so I'm much more assertive in my life. But you know, if I get into a brand new situation, like my wife takes me to her company's parties, you know, I don't know anybody there, and they're all talking about their businesses, and I'm going like, there's a tendency she'll say to me, do you want to go? And I go, no, I don't want to go. And I feel like I'm a little boy, you know, like, I don't want to go, I don't know anybody. I get that little anxiety that's there, it's just like, oh, I don't know if I want to go. And then my frontal lobes, remember that? My seat of reasoning and thinking kicks in, I go, come on, you can do this. Okay, that's that little shy boy in you, you don't have to do that. And I go, so what I do is to get over my shyness, I always ask my wife, don't leave me too quickly. All right? At least introduce me to somebody, and then she goes off, and then that person usually goes off. So my deal is I always go head for the food. Okay? And if I head for the food, there's always somebody coming over there, and I give them a hi, and usually I meet some other spouse that doesn't know what else to do, and we talk, and I go, hi, I'm Steve Lincoln. As soon as I do that, I'm okay. And I flow again. But I still have that, you know, that little boy that maybe is a little shy, that's there. Some of you may be a little difficult. And every once in a while, you get a little difficult. And you have to be able to realize and say, God, that's just that little difficult boy in me coming out. And you try to reduce that using what? The way you think. Okay, so what do we have? Combinations. Some of you aren't as easy as you once were, huh? Okay, kind of became more of a combination. That's the similar difficult numbers, though. All right, here's a question for 1 point. Let's see if you can answer this one. Now, this question has different verbiage on there than what I've had on other multiple choice questions. Usually the preceding multiple choice questions, it's usually the words that I used in class I put up on here. But this is a classic out-of-the-textbook question. So I give you this because students who do well in multiple choice tests also need to have a pretty good vocabulary and need to know the vocabulary that's used in the textbook as well. The importance of hereditary stems from the fact that it what? This is just what I just talked about. 1 is subject to environmental pressures. 2 determines the overall health of an organism. 3 sets the limits of development by providing a framework of potentials and limitations. 4 is more fragile than the environment and consequently can be changeable in its effects. You need to think about this a little bit more, but I did specifically mention this, right, in the last 10 minutes. So, but the verbiage is a little different, right? I didn't use this language. So this is the language that's right out of the textbook. So in order to do well on the test, you also need to know the language of the textbook besides what I try to use in here. I try to use the language we all use, right? I even consciously try to say, no, that vocabulary is too big. Don't use that word, okay? Because a lot of you are not native speakers, and it's difficult enough to be in class. So, we got this one? All right, we're getting it slowly, surely. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Everybody got their answers in? Okay, that's plenty of time. All right, so, hey, 86% of you correct. Right, it's the limits. Just look what I did with my hands, right? I kept going. There's limits that are there of development providing a framework for potentials and then limitations. IQ scores nurture, you're born probably with an average, and then the environment pushes you either to the higher levels, potentials, or the lower levels, the limitations. Okay. All right, we're moving right along. Developmental concepts. When we study how you changed emotionally, physically, socially, cognitively, we look at these 4 different concepts. So who you are and what you're all about. One concept is called maturation. Have you ever had somebody say, God, you're so mature for your age? Okay? And you said, yes, I am. Okay? I'm mature. Right? All of you are probably physically mature for your age. Right? You'll look like you're physically mature. You're in your late teens or 20s or so on. Okay? Now, if you have an infant and you go to what's called the well baby checkup, what happens is that usually your pediatrician is going to say, oh, yes, your baby's in the 95 percentile, okay, or in the 22 percentile. 95 percentile means, wow, they're larger than 95% of all babies their age. They're very physically mature for their age. If they say 20, then your child is probably underdeveloped, okay, for their age. They're immature for their growth that's there. And that's no big thing. Babies are all going to catch up eventually, but that's there. How about this question, though? If we look at maturation in terms of physical levels, do you also realize that some people may be mature or immature socially, emotionally, or cognitively? Think about that. Have you ever gone out with someone and they said, oh, yeah, I'm 25 years old, and you had this little smile and went, yeah, okay, you act about 14, though. Okay? You know, that could be pretty accurate that's there. Because maybe that person is chronologically 25, but emotionally about 14. That does happen. It really, really happens. How can that happen? Well, here's an example. Psychologists say emotionally, socially, cognitively, physically, you pass what's called milestones in your life, things that you have to learn. One thing you have to learn in adolescence, okay, is learn to be rejected, not get what you want, okay, and overcome that and move on. Got that? So here you are, some guy who's 14 years old, and you're going out with this girl, and she's your girl, okay, and then she sends you a text message which says, met someone else, we broke up, we're gone, bye, okay, just like that, okay, but you really, really like her, and she just cut you off so quickly, right, that's it, okay, you even see her later on that day at school, arm in arm with somebody else. God, does that hurt, right? You remember that when you got hurt? I'm the only one who got hurt at 14 years old. Okay, I still remember that. I was like somebody kicked me in the right in my heart. Okay, it hurt. I even remember her name too. Okay, it's kind of popped into my head. But you know, those early experiences, that's about emotional memories. Emotional memories we carry around. Okay, so that's there. Now, so you go up to your buddies, now this didn't happen to me, but if you go up to your buddies and you go, oh, you know, so-and-so just broke up with me, and they go, oh, well, she was anyway. We didn't know why you really cared about it, but I really cared about it. And they go, whoa, dude, don't cry on us now. You know, we really don't like it. Here, smoke this, don't cry, okay? So what happens, instead of you experiencing what? Hurt and pain and anger and rejection, what happens is that you smoke some pot or you take a couple of drinks, and that what stymies your development. You don't feel that stuff. Those of you who didn't do that and went through that realize that eventually you get over it, didn't we? Eventually you get over it, you recognize that you can be hurt, you can be sad, you can be angry, you can get rejected, but you can overcome that and move on. That is a milestone. Everybody's learned that. Now, maybe no one broke up with you, okay, but maybe you wanted to be on the basketball team and you got cut. Maybe you wanted to be on the drill team and you didn't make it. Maybe you've always wanted to be in the National Honor Society, but they didn't want you, okay? Whatever it may be, you wanted something, but you didn't get it, and you learned to what? Get over it. You learn that, hey, these things happen and I can recover. That is a milestone, an emotional developmental milestone for adolescents. So now here's this guy who's 25 years old now, and you're going out with him, and he kind of acts awful immature about stuff. You know, every time you say to him, hey, you know, I had a really good night, but there's one thing, and then when you're about ready just to tell him not to do something because you really don't like that, he cuts you off right away. Okay, and says, well, I really don't need to hear that. Love you, bye. And he leaves. And you go, what's this guy? He never wants to talk about anything. Why? Because he's so afraid that you're going to say no more. Okay, that you're going to break up with him. Even when you say, you know, now stop it. Every time we try to talk about something, you always cut me off. I don't like that. We need to talk about us. Oh, yeah? About us? Well, I'll tell you something. I'm out of here. I don't like you. I don't like the way you treat me. I'm gone. Okay? So I'm out of here. Goodbye. And he walks out the door, and you go, what the hell was that about? You know, I thought we needed to talk. God, he's so immature. He can't even talk about things. Why? Because he's so afraid of being so hurt like he was, but he never really learned to go through the process that he can overcome it. So we call it, what winds up happening, he's underdeveloped, okay? He was stuck in his development. Can he ever get over it? Sure. What he needs to do is be hurt, okay, and stick in there and learn that he can recover from it. And I can give you all kinds of endless examples. In fact, you could be sitting here right now thinking about the person you're going out with. Are you dating or married to an emotionally mature person? Now, I say dating or married because some of you are dating people, okay? Some of you are married to this person. The person you're married to, is he emotionally mature, he or she? The person you're dating? By the way, if the person sitting next to you, you're dating or married to, just do this. Actually, you need to talk with that person about that. Interesting questions, though, isn't it? Now, this maturation level also comes about in regards to cognitive development. Okay, are you cognitively mature? Are you ready for college? That's my next question, anyway. So, no. It's not a lot of faith out there, right, for people. Right, well, you need to know that, though, right? And for some of you, you're just dating. That's all you're doing, okay? Some of you are married to these people. Well, hopefully you can learn, okay, and work some of this out with them. The other concept we want to look at is something called readiness. Are you ready for something? All right? And I mean something. Like, let's do little children. When is a child ready? When is a child ready to be toilet trained? How do you know? Well, they need to be mature. This is where these two into play. They need to be physically mature. They need to be able to, the usual rule of thumb is that they have a dry diaper for about 3 to 5 days through the night. What that means, they are physically, their bladder is large enough to hold the urine in it so they don't go during the middle of the night. So that's what physical maturity. Are they socially mature to handle your directions? Because, by the way, this is not easy to toilet train a child. All right? Are they socially ready? Are they ready to understand the directions you're giving them? Are they emotionally ready? Or once they make a mistake, are they going to get upset and frustrated and not want to move on with it? They need to be emotionally ready to do that. Okay? They need to be cognitively ready to understand they no longer just go, they need to go over here. Okay, in this spot over here. So, were you ready? Now, as a parent, if your child isn't ready, this can be so frustrating for you and them. So you have to be what? Understand if they're ready just yet. Were you ready or your child ready to tie this shoelace? Do you know how difficult that is for some children? You have to have the physical ability of manual dexterity and small digit manipulation to take your little fingers, cross them over and loop them. You need the cognitive ability to be able to visualize that and understand that. You have to have the emotional maturity that you're not going to get frustrated because you're not going to do it right the first time. Some of you probably have never learned to do that. That's why you still have Velcro shoes, right? Okay, but are you ready for this stuff? So readiness is all about maturity levels, cognitive, social, emotional. That's there. So let me ask you some questions about that. Are you ready, or those of you who are married, were you ready to get married? You know, marriage is about, not physical maturity, but marriage is about emotional maturity, social maturity, some cognitive maturity that's there. I hope it's financial maturity as well. People always say, oh, it's cheaper when two people live together. Yeah, it is, but there's all kinds of other issues that go on, especially when you got money and you're supposed to both try to share it, and what are we going to spend our money on? And a lot of people get into deals with, that's not my money, that's not our money, that's my money. When we cover the chapter on relationships, we'll talk about some of the 4 biggest issues that people argue about in marriages. All right, so were you ready? Were you ready socially, emotionally, or are you right now? Yeah, a lot of you aren't, right? 51% of you. And hopefully that's a healthy thing for those of you, because a lot of you are 17, 18, 19, 20, just not ready yet. You're not ready socially. You'd still rather date more people. Just check out see who's out there. Because, once you're married, supposedly it's forever. Forever. You're that same person all those years. Are you emotionally ready to have a commitment to somebody, right? That's there. Are you socially, emotionally, are you physically ready? All different types of questions that are there for you. How about this question? Are you, if you never have, and were you the first time you had sex? Now that's a private question. If you want to answer that, you don't have to, but this is an interesting question because some of you at 14 and 15 years old were not ready. You were not ready. How about physically? A lot of women are not ready physically. The vagina is not that, it doesn't have the elasticity that it should have as you get older. And there's a lot of correlations with early sexual experiences, sexually transmitted diseases, as well as cervical cancer, which is based on sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, so you may not have been ready physically. And then the big question comes in, are you ready emotionally? Okay, to share your body with somebody else, socially, cognitively. That's there. It's a big question. In our society, we don't think about it that much, but it should be thought about. I know that's a bias. All right, so what do we got? Oh, we're all the way across the line, all right? Everybody, it's almost pretty even all the way across the line. Okay. But again, as an individual, these are the questions you need to start asking yourself. Are you ready for these things? And it's based on maturity levels. All right. Changing gears. Now what we're going to do is we want to talk about you and how you get to be who you are from a developmental perspective. All right, the first thing we're going to start off is childhood, and then I'll talk about adolescence, and then adulthood, then old age, and then we will talk about death as well. Prenatal influences. Who you are could have started through prenatal influences. What mama was ingesting. At one time, we used to talk about how the placenta used to be able to filter out all kinds of foods, nutritional values, alcohol, anything else that you brought into your system. Well, it doesn't. Whatever you take into your body, your child gets, your developing child gets. Matter of fact, not only what you ingest, but when you're stressed and you have a lot of stress in your life, those cortisol levels and the other stress hormones, your baby gets that too. We can actually show you that when you're stressed, your baby's fetal heart rate just goes much quicker. They move around a lot more when you're stressed. I can show you pictures of mothers who are severely depressed and how their developing fetuses also seem to be kind of depressed. I can show you a newborn born to a mother who's very depressed, and the baby kind of looks that way too. Fascinating stuff that's there. You all do know about addiction and about how a mother's addicted to a certain drug, the baby is too, once they're born. That's sad. That's really sad. So what we look at is prenatal influences that's there that could have an affect or an effect on how you got to be who you are. That's why when you do become pregnant, okay, you need to be very, very careful about what you ingest. And your physicians can talk with you about that because you're trying to provide a healthy, nutritionally healthy environment for your child. Deprivation and enrichment. During the last trimester and once you are born, there are very few dendrites and synaptic connections. Do you remember that from the last chapter? The dendrites and the axons, synaptic connections are the connections that are made between the dendrites and the axons. So what winds up happening is that these neurons are just kind of hanging out like this. They're genetically programmed, so they get programmed. But then what happens, once you are born, early learning environments shape the developing brain by either blooming or pruning the synapses. What does this mean? Once you are born, your brain is ready to learn. And the more your parents, your environment, your school enriches that your environment, the more your environment is enriched, the more your brain is going to be enriched. Every time you do something or see something or hear something or think about something over and over again, those little neurons start moving around and they begin to bloom. Okay? They begin to bloom. If that doesn't happen, then they begin to get pruned. There's no development that's there. That development is about nutritional aspects. It's so important that children get the right nutritional mix for themselves. Okay? And then two, a child's environment needs to be stimulating. They need to be talked to, hugged, touched. They need to be have a sense of smell developed, sound. They need to be read to. Because once you do that, that brain then gets stimulated and more synapses are able to bloom. Okay? And I'm going to talk about this. I'll give you very specific examples here as well. All right. These are the specific examples. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about social development and emotional development. But it has a lot to do with brain development as well. People don't realize this. The first study I want to talk with you about is what's called the attachment study. And the attachment study was done by a woman by the name of Ainsworth. That's A-I-N-S. Ains, and then Worth, W-O-R-T-H. Ainsworth. A-I-N-S-W-O-R-T-H. Ainsworth. And she did the attachment study. So let me tell you a little bit about this study. She no longer does these studies. These studies started in the 1960s. And they're still going on in the lab that she set up. What they were trying to find out was how important is it for a child to be attached to its, in this case, in the early studies, to its mother. Right? So what Ainsworth did, I'm going to just show you this. This is the attachment category study that was done. What Ainsworth did is that she brought mothers in, and she classified the mothers and the child as either a secure attachment, avoidant attachment, ambivalent, or unclassified. So she'd bring them in. And these were like anywhere from 18 months up until about 3 to 5 years old. Okay? About 5 years, 18 months to about 5 years old. So a mother would come in, let's say, with a little 2-year-old. And 2-year-olds don't usually sit in the mother's laps very easily. So Ainsworth would say, "Oh, is this your son? Introduce me to your son." Okay, so the securely attached mothers would say, "Oh, this is my son, Bobby. Bobby, say hello to Dr. Link." "Hello, Dr. Oh, that's Link. Oh, good. Well, you're really a cute guy." "Yes, he is. He's a great guy. Good kid." That's there. And the boy would kind of look at his mother, look at you, give the boy a little something to play with, like whatever, what you want, blocks or something to play with. But that's part of the experiment. Because you're really watching the mother and the child interaction that's there. The mothers who had secure attachment, okay, because by the way, children just don't sit there. They try to interrupt. So the mothers with secure attachment say, "I'll be right with you in a second, honey. Dr. Link wants to ask me something. I'll be right with you now. Just play with your toy." "What was it now?" "Answer that question." And then she would say to me, "Wait a minute. Okay, what do you need?" "I need to answer this for my son." Do you understand what's going on? There was a real interaction that's there, as opposed to the avoidant mothers who would go in, "Introduce me to your son. This is Bob." "Hi, Bob. How are you?" Sometimes he talks, sometimes he doesn't. So what kind of questions do you have for me? Okay. "Stop it now. The man is asking me questions, so you need to just sit there and just listen." He said, "Play with the toy. Play with the toy." "All right, what's your question again?" And what wind up happening, you see this kid slowly kind of slinking away from his mother. It's kind of like, "God, I don't even want to be around you." Okay? All you do is yell at me all the time. not much attachment there, is it? He's trying to almost avoid the mother. So she classified all these different mothers and children this way, and then she set up a big playroom, and she asked the mother and child to come into the playroom. And once the mother and child entered the playroom, then she told the mother, I want you to say goodbye to your child. Your child's going to be here for about an hour playing with the other children, and we have some questions we want to ask you when you leave. The questions didn't matter. She really wanted to see the mother and child interaction. Securely attached child, mother would say, stay here right now and play with these other children. I'll be back in a little while. Don't leave, Mom! I mean, even the securely attached is kind of like, oh, I don't know who these people are, don't leave me. And they grab onto the leg. But the mother would do this, right? I mean, this is real important. Look, honey, I'm going to be back in a little while. I always come back, love you a lot, but I'll just be back. Looks like some wonderful children to go play with. Why don't you do that? Okay, Mommy. Oh, Mommy. Mommy's gone. Okay, she's gone. And he just goes out there, hey, I'm Bobby, what's your name? And starts playing. But you know, it's like, don't do it, but you know what? I trust you. You'll be back, because I got an attachment with you. I know what's going on here. You feel good about me, I feel good about you. I trust you. Things are going to work out. If I trust myself, I'll be able to play with other people as well. Avoidant child. Hey, mother would come in and say, all right, go play with these kids. I'll be back in a while. No, don't leave. Don't you leave me now. Don't do that. Look, just shut up and go play with the other kids, would you? And he walks out. And this kid was angry. He'd either sit there and scream and yell, okay, and wouldn't just go play, or he'd go play. But he still had all that kind of anger in him, and he didn't play very well with the other kids. Just didn't get along. Mother would come back for secure attached mother. Child would usually run up and, Mommy, give Mommy a hug, okay, and say, come on, let me meet my friends. Or they would say, hi, Mom, and keep playing. Okay, I don't want to go. Well, we need to go now. Oh, okay. And they eventually leave. Avoidant child. Look at the mother. Just avoid her. Turn her back to the mother and keep playing with the other kids. Come on, you need to go. And she usually grab him by the arm and pull him out of the room that's there. Or what he would do, in some cases, the kids would go up to the mother and look at the mother and just, boom, punch him one right in the calf that's there. How dare you leave me like that? Okay? Why did he do that to his mother? Because that's what probably his mother does to him. Right? That's how we get modeling that one on. So you had secure attachment. Thankfully, about 63% of the study was that way. Avoidant children. Ambivalent meant basically they were attached, but they weren't really that attached. And you got a whole range of different gestures and actions with the children that's there. And then some were unclassified. What Ainsworth did was follow these children as they got older just to see their interactions and their issues that they may have, and which children had the most issues, emotional issues. The avoidant children, right? Okay? Socially, emotionally, they had much more difficulty with themselves than other children. But let me tell you about another study that to me is one of the more fascinating studies out there. It's called the Harlow's Motherless Monkey Studies. And your textbook only gives one little paragraph to this study. But I think it's a very important study. The reason why they only give it a paragraph, because it was done in the 1960s. Good gosh, that's over 50 years ago, right? So it's an old study, right? But it's a pretty impactful study. Harlow's Motherless Monkey Studies, and I'll come back to this. Just let me show you a picture. Now, what the Harlows did is that they wanted to know what would happen if a child was taken away from its mother and didn't have that mother-to-child attachment what would happen to these children? Well, they weren't going to do it with humans, so they did it with what? Monkeys, rhesus monkeys. Okay? So they had a whole colony of rhesus monkeys. The control group, okay, and the control group is what you're not doing the experiment with, whereas mothers would have a child, okay, and then the mothers got to keep the child throughout the experiment and live within the community. The experimental group was this group, okay? As soon as the child was born, they pulled it away from its mother and had them raised, for at least the early part of their lives, in these cages, okay? And there were distinctive different cages. There was a long line of cages, and the monkey would go in, and the first one had a wire mesh mother with a nipple right there with a bottle in it. But all it was wire mesh. It had the little eyes and the nose and the mouth like that, but there wasn't the terry cloth around it. The first one just had wire mesh. The next one was this, okay? It had terry cloth wrapped around it, okay? The next one was this, and it had a heating element as well as a bottle in it. And then the next, these are all rows of these cages. The next one over had all of the preceding, but it also had a rocking motion to it. Rocking is very important for all of us, isn't it? Okay, you take a baby, you rock the baby. Sometimes when you get upset, you just want to be held, and if you're standing up with somebody, they hold you. Before you know it, you're just moving back. It's very soothing, isn't it? Very rocking chair. It's a very soothing motion that's there. So what we wound up with was with the control group, which was the monkeys that were raised in the community with their mothers, and then the ones in these cages. Everybody got that? Stages of emotional development. The Harlows said there were 4 distinct stages of emotional development. They also called this stages of love, which I thought was interesting, stages of love. The first stage, okay, was the mother giving love to the child. Mother to infant love. That's the first stage. What is this? This is when the mother absolutely takes care of the child. And in the community, the mother would pick up the child would nurse with the mother would have the child. And you can see they're rocking the baby as the baby is nursing. The baby comes off, they keep holding, they pick the bugs off the baby that's there. They carry them around when they're younger. Eventually they let them go a little bit more. Monkey always comes back to its mother when it's afraid of something and just kind of sits there and looks out. And the mother goes, "It's okay, baby, it's okay." Well, obviously they don't talk, but their gestures say, "It's okay, pick some more bugs off you, love you, okay, it's okay." What kind of experience do you think the wire mesh babies had, right? They didn't have any of that. So the real wire mesh one was over here, just this cold wire mesh with a nipple on it. Okay? What kind of contact comfort did they get? Not much, right? Did they get the sensory stimulation, okay, that the mothers were giving? Because the mothers were hugging the baby, making sounds to the baby, auditory, right? Picking bugs off of them, pushing them out, bringing them back. They had a lot of sensory stimulation. Now, in each one of these cages, this is the one that was really, we'll call it dysfunctional, okay? But as you went up to this last one over here, at least they were getting some type of warmth and they were getting some rocking motion that's there. So, mother to infant love, we'd say the ones in the colony got the mother to infant love, and these didn't, okay, with various degrees. This one severely, this one not as much. The second stage of emotional development, according to the Harlows, husband and wife team, okay, was peer love, P-E-E-R, friendship love, friend love. The love you get from your friends, okay, friend love. So in the monkey colony, what you saw was these monkeys who had the safety and security and the attachment of its mother, who then the mother was going, "Yeah, go play, go play, go play." And they run out and play and come back to the mother, run out and play, come back to the mother. Then eventually just start forming friendships, right? And then you see these monkeys, they're friends, chasing each other, wrestling with each other. Okay, do you see monkeys as they play? They're flying around. They start wrestling with each other and stuff. But the monkeys who had mother to infant love, they would wrestle with other monkeys but never hurt any other monkeys. Okay? They knew just how far to go, because what they learned from their mothers is something called empathy. Empathy. Feeling what somebody else is feeling. So they got to know, gee, we're playing a little too rough. It's a little too rough. I shouldn't do this anymore. And they would begin to back off. All right? They picked bugs off each other. They started friendships. What the Harlows then did was take all of these monkeys who were in these cages and introduce them back into the colony, just to see what was going to happen. Let's see if they can learn pure love. By the way, some of them did, particularly these in these cages over there would run out, start wrestling with other monkeys. They were a little rough, but the other monkeys would begin to teach them, no, you're too rough, you're too rough, you're too rough. Look, when you pick bugs off of me, don't pinch me, just pick the bugs off. Because they never learned, the mother never taught them, right? They didn't have a mother to teach them how to do that. Some of them learned to get along, and they learned pure love. A lot of them, though, in this spectrum down here, never really learned it. They got out there, they started chasing the other monkeys, but when they wrestled, they were too rough. They hurt the other monkeys. And what we began to see that some of the monkey colony, the healthier monkeys, began to shun the unhealthy monkeys. Kind of like, don't go play with them. Yeah, that one's a bully. Stay away from that one. Some of these monkeys over here didn't want anything to do with the other monkeys and would just sit in the corner like this, suck their thumb and look around. Other monkeys became little bullies. Okay? Who'd they bully? Well, the ones that were sitting over here like that. They didn't pick on the other monkeys who felt better about themselves. Do you remind you of like second and third grade, maybe? Some kids and stuff, or you didn't, like a lot of the kids would go play with him, he's a little weird, okay? Or he's a little too rough, he doesn't know how to get along with other people. That starts real early, okay? Probably starts from how the child was raised, according to this study. Okay.
During it sound like, during it sound that the monkeys were in the cage, were they able to see,
Well, they never saw these monkeys. All of a sudden, these new monkeys showed up. Okay? So the Harlows said, yeah, well, maybe that's part of it. That's why they're getting rejected. But what they wound up doing, once the monkeys in the control group, in the colony, started going out playing with the other ones, they introduced the new ones. They wanted to make sure that that variable of, they wanted to make sure that the new kid at school was not a variable, that they all started together at the same time. Okay? And with these studies, that could be a variable, right? But they tried to control it the best they could. The next stage of love, the third stage of love, is what the Harlow called romantic love or mating love. Okay? This is when the monkeys then reached maturity, sexual maturity, and they're able to mate. So what you wound up finding is that these monkeys would go off and start running and chasing each other, but they began to pair up. Okay, male-female pairing up. And they'd wrestle with each other, and they'd stop, pick bugs off each other, and if you ever watch monkeys, they cuddle up with each other, they caress each other and everything. And when they're ready to mate, females goes into estrus, and they're ready to mate, and what happens, it's the female monkey who basically says, yeah, you're the one. I want to be with you. And they kind of choose the male monkey they want to mate with, and they kind of just back themselves up into them, right? And they copulate, okay, and they become pregnant. So what was interesting is what the Harlows found was that the monkeys who had mother-to-infant love, who learned pure love, matched up, paired up with the other ones who had the same thing. So you wound up having the healthier, psychologically healthier monkeys pairing up together, and the unhealthy monkeys pairing up together. These monkeys here, they didn't want to mate with anybody. They were just like, leave me alone. Okay? The bullying monkeys would get to the point where they try to mate with this monkey, in some cases raping them, a lot of times forcibly trying to have intercourse with other monkeys that didn't want to, and that was male or female, by the way. The female monkeys were like, how about you? Back into you. No? Okay, how about you? Okay, would push themselves on them. They just never learned how to what? Make contact with the other monkeys. By the way, the monkeys who didn't get mother-to-infant love, but did get pure love, were able to mate with other monkeys and do it in a healthy way. Okay? Well, the Harlows didn't stop there, but they said, we need to see what happens to the fourth stage, because he said the fourth stage was like a cycle, and what you come back to now is mother-to-infant love. But in this case, the first stage was the love you received from your mother. Now the fourth stage is the love a mother can give to the infant. Get that? It's like a full cycle that's there. Right? They went ahead and artificially inseminated any female monkey that didn't become pregnant. Even the one sitting there like that, they artificially inseminated her. They wanted to see whether or not, if these new mothers, how they were going to mother. Right? Well, in the control group, okay, these now mothers had their babies. They did what their mothers did, what their friends did, what their mates did, which was they were able to give the love to the baby, nurse them, caress them, hold them, give them contact comfort, right, and sensory stimulation. This mother here, when she had her baby, she would let the baby nurse, and then after a while would just do this and turn her back to the baby. It's kind of like almost abandoning the baby. At least I'll give you the milk, but don't bother me. And kept pushing the baby off. The angry monkeys, who are bully monkeys, okay, when their babies would get on them and nurse, they'd let them nurse for a while, and then they'd stop them and push them away. Stop them, push them away. In some cases, they got very violent with their babies. They picked up the babies and flung them across the cage. And very sadly, some of them even killed their babies. When the Harlows found that out, they stopped the study. Okay? The Harlows concluded what's really, really important for all of us is in the beginning be able to get that mother-to-infant love, have that then develop through peer love, then we have romantic love, then we can become good mothers. Now, let me stop and say, is that correct for humans? Well, you know what? Yeah, it is. We do see that. Now, you're sitting there and you may be saying, oh, I didn't get mother-infant love. I don't have any pure love. Never had a relationship. I guess I'm doomed. No, you're not. Because you can get this at any time of your life. You may meet somebody someday who really cares about you. This may seem really odd, but they care about you so much, it's almost as if you're getting parental love. Okay? Or maybe you didn't get it as a mother-infant love, but you had friends of yours when you were in elementary school who were really patient with you, and you got it then. Or maybe you didn't get mother-infant love, you didn't get friend love, but you met somebody who's really patient with you, okay, and you kept pushing them away, but they said, no, you're really a wonderful person, and then you got what? Pure love and the mother-infant love that you have. Or maybe you did get pregnant, and you have a frontal lobe, and you're listening to what I'm saying right now, and you're saying, you know what? I'm not doing it to my child just because I didn't get it, because I was what? Unlucky. Had nothing to do with who you are. Had nothing to do with your basic essence, your goodness. You just got unlucky. Are you with me with this? I was lucky. I was born to loving, caring parents. Okay? Some people just get unlucky. It's not like we're up there in the world and wherever our spirits are and say, I think I'll choose to be the unlucky one. Some people get lucky, some people get unlucky. So some people are fortunate, some people are unfortunate. The beauty of us, because we have frontal lobes, is that we can right now say, no, that wasn't right. I was just unlucky. It wasn't about me. Can you imagine if you were a monkey going, I feel abandoned, no one loves me, but you know what? That wasn't about me. I'm really a good person. And if you start thinking that and feeling that, then your environment's going to react to you and reinforce that. So you can change this at any time in your life. By the way, easier said than done. I'm up here telling you, just do this. No, it's easier said than done, but you can change this. And by the way, the Harlows were really good people. They then developed what they called psychotherapy in the lab. And what they did is they got those dysfunctional monkeys and they put them in a large kind of colony with monkeys who were just learning to have peer love. And they incorporated this dysfunctional adult monkey as a peer. And the little monkeys would run up and jump on them. And the kind of shy monkey would just sit there and go like this, like, what are they doing to me? What are they doing? And eventually you just saw that monkey just kind of relax a little bit, grab them, hug them a little bit more, pick bugs off of them as if they were receiving peer love. And then it was beautiful to watch these films. They're all black and white. They're not good films anymore. Even the angry monkeys, Okay? As long as they put in monkeys that could take care of themselves, because when this monkey would get mad, they kind of stuck with them. And for a lot of them, not all of them, but for a lot of them, eventually they kind of broke down and realized, well, I guess I'm not so bad. Do you understand that statement? I guess I'm not so bad. Because a lot of people, when you're younger and you're growing up, the message is there's something wrong with you. If your mother doesn't love you, there's something wrong with you. No! Something wrong with your mother. Not you. But as children, we're what? We're very, we think of ourselves, and we're very egotistical in thinking it must be about me. Interesting study, right? Can this happen in humans? Yeah, it can. Let me tell you some stories about this. He's not here today. Some of us here who grew up in Romania. I'll tell you about the Romania stories, okay? In the early 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, remember the Soviet Union from history? When they collapsed, okay, all of in their sphere of influence, those countries, all of a sudden opened themselves up. In Romania, they got rid of their dictator, and during that time, the communist regime basically told people, you can only have one child, okay? There's going to be no abortions. There'll be only going to have one child, and you can't have birth control. Okay? Something's wrong with all that. Okay? Well, people kept having more than one child. Well, once you had more than one child, they took the baby away from you. And they raised them in these huge, plural would be an orphanages, okay? An orphan home, but plural, okay? And by the way, they did not abuse these children. They were good people here who were working there. They just had too many children for the number of workers. So the little babies, visualize this, a king-size bed. Now put a crib around it, okay? And now put about 6 or 7 babies in there, all right? All in one big crib. And they were well fed, but instead of picking up the baby, like you all might do with and feeding the baby, and as you feed the baby, you're saying to the baby, oh, you're so cute, look at you, you're so lovable, I love you so much, you really are, oh, you're so great. And you touch them, and you talk to them, and you read them stories later on, and you play music to them. What you're giving this baby is sensory stimulation. To what? Bloom the brain. You with me? What did they do with these babies in these huge cribs? They didn't have time to pick them up. There were too many of them. So they had these baby bottle props. What they are is you can put a bottle on it like this, and it holds it like this, and they stuck the baby onto it, and they went to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. They never got all this stuff. They never got the contact comfort. Just, ooh, this contact comfort, right? Doesn't that feel good sometimes? It does. Okay, it just feels good sometimes. And sometimes, by the way, some of you who grew up without that, sometimes you need to learn to love yourself. Does that make sense? If nobody else is around, I'm okay. Looks weird, doesn't it? Me sitting there doing this. But it is. I'm okay. I'm all right. Getting that contact comfort. But anyway, they didn't get that either. When they had to change a diaper, as a parent, you say, woo, diaper, stinky, woo, look at that stuff. But you're still so cute, aren't you so cute? Okay? You're talking. You're still stimulating them. You clean them up. You hug them. Contact comfort. These babies didn't get that. It's 10:20, everybody gets changed. This one, the next one, the next one, an assembly line down the way. Well, they had all these babies in Romania, and Romania said, well, I don't know what we're going to do with all these babies. Okay, we're no longer supported by the Soviet Union. We don't have any more money, so we need to give these babies up for adoption. So they announced to the world, okay, put it on the beginning of the World Wide Web back then, that we have babies. So people came from all over the world to adopt these children. So people would come and look at this infant and go, God, he's such a cute little infant. Was he about 3 months old? No, that baby's 8 months old. 8 months old? They look like about 3 months old. Huh? What about this baby? He's just starting to walk. He looks like a toddler. What is he, about 18 months, 2 years old? No, they're 3.5. 3.5. Don't look that way. What about these babies over here? He looks like about 4. No, he's 7. What's going on? What was going on? They were delayed physically, all right? Socially, emotionally, and cognitively. And the battery tests we gave these children, they delayed all the way. They were getting the nutrition, the one thing they were not getting was contact, comfort, and sensory stimulation. It's needed for cognitive, social, physical, and emotional development, and they never got it. The younger the baby, remember I used the word delayed, developmentally delayed, the quicker they were able to catch up. The older ones, who really were 4, 5, 6, and 7, they, to this day, they still have developmental issues, whether that be in terms of height and weight, but more in terms of cognitive development more than anything else. That's there. And that's sad. How important that is when you have a baby to what? Contact comfort, talk to them, adequate nutrition that's there, how important all that is. Is that an interesting study? I get excited about that study every time I talk about it. I think that's fascinating that talks about our early lives. Did you develop an emotional connection as a child? Right? I told you at the beginning of the semester that I'm going to give you the theories, but I also want you to think about your own lives. The more you become aware, the more you learn about yourself, the more you can change yourself. This one working? Yeah, I guess so. Okay. We got, most of you have, right? Good for you. 88% of you were fortunate. Right? Great. Go home and when you see your parents, go, thank you. I just learned today to say thank you. I was fortunate. Okay? Those of you who are the 4% who didn't get that, I'm sorry. Okay? But I'm with you. Okay? I'm absolutely with you, but you can develop connections, and maybe some of you have already. I developed my emotional connection to who? Who was it? Maybe it's many of the above. By the way, a baby can develop an emotional connection not just with one, but with numerous people. It could be your nanny. It could be your grandmother, grandfather, your mother, your father, your sister. How about your dog? Laugh, but that's true. You can develop a real emotional connection with your pet. That's why when your pet dies, I'm sorry, okay, and you were 9 years old and your little doggy died and you were just so upset and people went, what are you upset about? It was just a dog. That wasn't just a dog. Okay? You were emotionally connected to that dog. Some of you may have come from wealthier families and you have a nanny. Okay? Well, maybe you were real close to that nanny because the nanny brought you up and the nanny left. Well, that hurt too. I didn't know this, but I was basically brought up by my grandmother in my early years, like until I was 2 or 3. My dad was in the hospital, and we lived with my grandmother, and so she was the one. So, later on in life, I loved my grandmother and stuff, but some things I didn't like about her. But there was always this, I always felt connected to her. It was like grandma. Say the word grandma, I'm like, oh, grandma, I love you. Okay? Well, I formed my first emotional connections with my grandmother. Some of you may have formed them with your older sister, because you come from big families, and it was your older sister who was the primary caregiver. So she took care of you, and you had that irrational connection to your older sister. You just love her. But now, she's an absolute creep. Okay? She steals money from you. She stole your boyfriend. She stole your girlfriend. Whatever. I don't know. Whatever goes on in your life with her. You just don't like her. You don't want to be around her. But you still love her. And you go, why do I love her so much? Okay, I still feel tight with her. Well, it's because that early experiences probably made an emotional connection that's there with her. Right? So you can have as many as you want. And really, great. Have as many as you want. Most of it is mothers. By the way, mothers are what? The primary caregivers in just about all cultures. Just about all cultures. Men are coming into it a little bit more, but in most cultures it's mothers. And a lot of you have many connections. All right, let's talk about the other important part of childhood, and that is parenting. How important parenting is. A woman by the name of Baumrind said that she's identified 3 different types of parenting styles. Parenting styles. One type of parenting style is called the authoritarian style. This is where the parent is the boss, the supreme ruler of the family, the tough father, the strict mother. They say things like, I am the king of the castle. As long as you live under my roof, you obey my rules. But I'm 24. It doesn't matter. You live here. You will be home by this time. Right? The truly authoritarian parent. This is what you're going to do. This is what you do. Do it or else. Usually there's some type of corporal punishment that's there with these people as well. Okay? The authoritarian parent. I am the master of this house, and you will do as I say. We are going on a vacation. This is where we're going, and you will have fun. The opposite of the authoritarian parent was the permissive parent. Complete opposite. The authoritarian parent, you'll call me Dad. The permissive parent is, hey, don't call me Dad, call me Steve. Because what I want to be is your best friend. Permissive parents are best friend parents. I want to be your best friend. I'm going to be your best friend. You tell me everything, I'll tell you everything. What rules? We don't need rules. Okay? No rules, no guidelines. You do whatever you want. You want to go to bed anytime you want? Go to bed anytime you want. You want to eat whatever you want? Eat whatever you want. It's okay by me. You're an adolescent now? I tell you what. I smoked pot when I was younger. So will you. I'll tell you what. I'll buy the pot. You invite your friends over, and we'll all smoke together. Laugh about that, but some of you knew. Some of your friends had parents like that. Okay? Well, I'll buy the bottles of booze or whatever else, and we'll do this. You know, I'm pretty sure you're probably having sex at 13, so we need to make sure we get you on the birth control pill. Really don't want to. Well, you might, though. So we need to get really permissive. No rules, no regulations. Do whatever you want. Right? These were, for some of you, the cool parents. Right? The cool parents that were there. No boundaries, though. These kids had problems. The authoritarian kids had problems, but these are the kids who really had a lot of problems that were there. No rules, no regulations. By the way, call me Steve, okay? Or let's say I'm Mom, call me Mom, okay? Or don't call me Mom, call me Sarah, okay? But I'm telling you everything, and you're telling me everything. I want to tell you everything. God, you know, your father and I are having some difficulties. I want to have sex every night. He doesn't. And you as a child are going, oh my God, I don't want to hear this. I really don't even want to know. But your mother just keeps telling you all this stuff. It's like, good gosh, Mom, don't you have any boundaries? Some of you, by the way, all of a sudden became very emotionally and socially mature at an early age because it was as if somebody need to be the adult here. And you maybe were the adult to your younger brothers and sisters. The authoritative parent is the better parent, okay? The authoritative parent is probably the healthiest of all the parents. And they're saying, I am the authority here. You will call me Dad, okay? But I'm responsible for you. Okay? I'm responsible for you. So that we need to have some boundaries here. We need to have curfews. We're going to go on vacation. Your mother and I thinking about where to go. We want your input on this, but then your mother and I are going to decide. But we want your input. We want to talk with you about this. Hey, you know, I think it's important that you're now 15, you're going out. I think we need a curfew. No, I don't need a curfew. I think we need a curfew. No, I don't. You need a curfew. What should your curfew be? No curfew. None of my friends have curfews. All right, I'm going to call your friends' parents. No, don't do that. Yeah, I'm going to call your friends' parents. By the way, these people probably still have contacts from when you were in elementary school with your best friends because they're talking about it, about you and them and everything else. Because if I want my child to go spend the night at somebody else's house, I want to know about their parents before you go over there. I want to meet their parents. No, you don't meet. Yeah, I want to meet them. You're not going over somebody else's home without me meeting their parents. No, it's embarrassing. Too bad. Because I care about you, but I have the last word. And what I'm going to say is that by the time you leave my house, I want you to be independent and responsible. So when you're young, I'm telling you what to do. But as you get older, you're going to get more and more responsibility. Those boundaries on you are going to get wider and wider and wider. Because I'm the authoritative parent. I have the authority, but I want you to grow up to be independent and responsible. The authoritarian parent, I want you to grow up the way I want you to grow up. My way. Permissive parent, whatever. Okay? So, Right, interesting stuff. I'll come back to the effective in a second. What type of parent did you have? Now, I do realize that some of you had two authoritarian parents, or two permissive parents, or two parents who were authoritative, or you really only grew up with one parent. Which one was it? Or did you have 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1 and 3? Because, by the way, sometimes parents do match up this way. It's not uncommon to have an authoritarian parent and a permissive parent. And who did you go to? The permissive parent all the time, right? And the permissive parent went, don't tell your father. That's not a good way of growing up either. So what did you have? Most of you had authoritative. Very good. It's my healthy class here. All right? And combinations that are there. But the question then comes up, okay, and I'm going to lead this into effective parenting. The most important trait a parent can have is what? Now, I hope some of you say, Steve, you should put 8. And 8 would be all of the above, right? But now you tell me, what do you think is the most important trait a parent should have? Again, this is just for the fun of it. By the way, that I had authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, and then number 4 was effective. What are the traits of an effective parent? There you go. That's all of these, isn't it? Traits of an attractive parent. So just out of interest, what do you think is the most important? 1 and 6. So 1 is effective communication, yeah, and loving, sure. I think if you're loving, you have all the other stuff, right? Effective parents do all this stuff. They have effective communication. Not that they know how to tell you what to do, because they're good at that, okay? But the most important communication trait is the ability to listen. To sit down and say, tell me what's going on. When you sit with a child, if you don't mind, when you sit with a child and they say, tell me what's going on, and I don't interrupt you, and I look at you and I effectively listen to you, I pay attention to you, what I'm doing is saying to that child, you are important. I care about you so much, no matter what you tell me, I'm going to listen. If you want to be successful in any type of relationship, be a good listener. Be an active listener. Because what that tells the person is, especially a child, you're important. I'll tell you some my children's stories, but at one time my daughter, I was doing something mundane like washing the dishes. My daughter came along and said, Daddy! I said, what? Washing the dishes. And then she was just talking. I'm like, no, okay. I really wasn't listening. Then I feel this, Daddy! She practically rips my pants off. Daddy! I said, what? She said, look at my face. Okay. I think she was so used to, all right, tell me what's going on. It's like, you're not listening to me. You better listen to me. That's important. Well, she learned that, right? Active listener. If you're going out with somebody, you're in a romantic relationship, you better learn active listening. Listen, talk to them. Guys, you ready? Really? Is that what happened? Oh, boy, that sucks. Oh, okay. Really? Tilt your head? Really? Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, really? That's active listening. You're not even saying anything. Women have learned to do this with your friends. You do that a lot. You learn to actively listen. Setting boundaries, right? I want my children, an effective parent wants their children to be independent and responsible when they leave. So boundaries are tight in the beginning, but as they get older, they get more and more responsibilities. 3, be honest. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said that to you. Sorry. That's a parent saying something like that. It's okay to do that. Honest with your children will be honest with you. Be fair, right? Be respectful of them. Obviously be loving. Be consistent. All right, that's another one. Each and every time they do something, if you don't want them to do something, then you need to reinforce whatever that is. Being consistent as possible. But the big thing is that when your children leave your home, they're independent and responsible. Right? Independent and responsible. All right, one question for one point, then I'll stop. Which parents view children as having few rights but adult-like responsibilities? You don't have any rights, but I want you to be grown up and mature. Do as I say.